Hello queens, angels, and goddesses. Welcome back to my channel. Warning: this contains boy love, and if you don't like it then please get off my channel. Water pistol. Grinning face with cowboy hat. Kenma stares down at his currently fast asleep boyfriend, who is sprawled in the most uncomfortable looking position whilst drooling a sizable pool onto said boy's pillow. The bedroom light Kenma turns on seems to stir Hinata awake enough for him to groan in displeasure before begrudgingly sitting up to assess the situation. Kenma. What's going on? Hinata asks groggily, rubbing his eyes in a lazy motion. Hinata opens his eyes, scanning the way too bright room. Their bedside table clock reads the 21st of June, 3:05 a.m., making it officially Hinata's birthday. Hinata looks toward the bedroom door and is faced with Kenma fully dressed and surrounded by Gucci and Louis Vuitton bags alike. Get dressed, our flight leaves in 30. Kenma and Hinata arrive at the airport after a short limousine ride from their trusty chauffeur Kuru. They head for the private jet Kenma had reserved for their flight. As their luggage is loaded onto the plane, the two settle in seats next to each other in the silent jet. Kenma, where exactly are we going? Hinata asks, pulling Kenma's blanket over Kenma and himself. You'll see in a few hours, Shao. Kenma answers, pulling Hinata closer to himself. Hinata hums in response and rests his head on Kenma's shoulder, welcoming the new warmth of Kenma's hand in his. As the pilot announces the jet's takeoff, Hinata unknowingly starts to doze off as they settle into the sky. Hinata is stirred awake as the plane lands, immediately aware of his sore neck and aching need to stretch. He looks out the windows to an oddly familiar landscape and realizes that being dragged to the airport and departing Japan in a private jet was, in fact, not a dream. Hinata looks to his side at Kenma, who turns off his phone and places it in his limited edition cat print Gucci purse. Kenma, Hinata says before cutting himself off and peering out the window again. Where are we? A small grin spreads across Kenma's face as he responds. We just landed in Rio. Kenma looks down at Hinata from his seat, watching as his boyfriend's expression turns from confusion to joy as he quickly turns around and smiles at Kenma. Happy birthday, Shao. Kenma laughs as Hinata tackles him with a hug, kissing Kenma's face all over. Kenma and Hinata climb into yet another limousine that arrives at the front of what seemed to be a restaurant, nearly entirely made of glass. Whoa Kenma, this place looks expensive. I never came here when I lived here. What's this place called? Hinata marveled. Adega Santiago Barra, I believe. I made a little reservation. It's not too fancy, Kenma remarked, stepping out of the limousine then holding the limousine door open for Hinata. Once they stepped into the restaurant, a woman covered head to toe in expensive-looking attire greeted them, directing them to their table. There were giant circular lights scattered around the restaurant complemented by the slick wooden tables, giant windows, and outrageously large potted plants. But what stood out to Hinata was the fact that the entire restaurant was empty save for the employees who were quietly chattering while staring at the two. You look confused, so I'll explain. I reserved all the tables for today so we could be alone, Kenma stated. As for that, Kenma motions a hand to the whispering employees. I have no clue, Kenma adds, sending a slight glare at the employees. Hinata stares at Kenma in disbelief. Kenma, babe, you really didn't have to do all this for me. This is so sweet of you. Kenma flushes, averting his eyes. It's your birthday, this is the least you deserve. Gua Kenma, I love you so much, Hinata whines and Kenma hums in response. They both order their lunch and are pleasantly surprised when the food turns out delicious. It turns out that some of the employees were fans of Kobzakan, asking Kenma for his autograph once they finished their meals. Kenma obliged but was clearly in a hurry to get to whatever their next activity of the day was. Once they were back in the limousine, Hinata asked, so where are we going now? Are we gonna go to the beach? Hinata beamed. Kenma smiles but shakes his head, not yet. This time they don't arrive at a fancy building. Hinata is confused about exactly where they are until he sees a big red tram with the word Cocobado across its side. Only then does he register that they are at the train station that leads to the Christ the Redeemer statue. Hinata is immediately excited, turning to Kenma. Kenma knows Hinata's question before he asks it. Yeah, we're going up there. Kenma points to the mountain above them, taking Hinata's hand in his hand while they head for the ticket booth. The tram ride was crowded but fun. Hinata would point out various things to Kenma during the ride, like jackfruit, birds, and other small animals. Kenma ingrained the image of Hinata's face into his mind when Hinata spotted the cutest coatis he had ever seen. Once the tram stopped, Hinata was already grabbing Kenma's hand, pulling them toward the stairs up to the statue. Hinata had mentioned that he had visited the statue once before, but even no. Hinata marveled at the grand size of the statue. Kenma's train of thought was interrupted by Hinata gasping, turning to Kenma. Kenma, you've never been here, right? We need to take pictures. Kenma considered it. If they took pictures, Kenma could blow them up and frame them in their home back in Japan. Plus Hinata was literally bouncing in excitement, and Kenma just couldn't say no to that face. Fine. As soon as Kenma gives the approval, Hinata is already running up to a woman and asking for her to take their picture. Kenma wonders if that lady knows she's being blessed by Ryo's second son. The first pose, Hinata gives the camera a big toothy smile, all the while extending his arms out like the statue behind them. Kenma smiles, standing in front of Hinata's arm with his hands in his pockets. The second pose, Hinata catches Kenma off guard, wrapping the previously extended arms around Kenma's waist, pulling him into a side hug, and kissing Kenma square on the cheek. Kenma can't help but smile even wider, leaning into Hinata's chest. Kenma feels something in his chest that he can only place as content. After a short drive, they arrive at a cozy beach house mere yards away from the ocean. They unpack their luggage and explore the house. The house seemed expensive, as all things Kenma picks out are. Kenma leads Hinata to the house's living room. That's when Hinata notices the giant pile of presents on the coffee table in the center of the room. Kenma, are these all from you? How did these even get here? Hinata asked, puzzled. Kenma hummed, I had them delivered by Kuru before we arrived. Most of them are from me, but a fair amount of them are from the others. Kenma motioned to the intimidatingly large pile of gifts. Go ahead, they are all yours. Hinata unwrapped every single present with the same amount of enthusiasm as the last. Suga gave him a card signed by all his elementary school students, various souvenirs from Nishinoya's travels, a mini Christ the Redeemer statue from Asahi. That one's ironic. Kenma gave him many presents, but one stood out among the rest. It was a small, metal, egg-shaped object with a jeweled knob at the bottom. Hey Kenma, what's this? Is it some kinda tool? What does it do? Hinata questions, twisting and turning the egg-shaped object around in his hand, trying to decipher exactly what said object was. Kenma smiles, taking the object from Hinata and putting it back in its respective box, then sitting up. You'll see later tonight, don't worry. Hinata isn't stupid, he gets that innuendo and immediately flushes, his mind wandering on what exactly that thing is, but is interrupted by Kenma. It's almost sunset, let's take a walk, Kenma smiled. Apparently, the beach house Kenma rented also gave them access to a long strip of private beach that only they could use. They walked along the shoreline till sunset. Hinata rambled about the day's previous events while Kenma listened. Hinata brought a big red beach bucket to the beach when Kenma mentioned there would be crabs along this strip of beach. His goal was to collect as many as he could before they went back to the beach house for the night. Hinata would also pick up every shell he could find, giving them to Kenma, who would place them in Hinata's bucket for later. Hinata had collected a small army of crabs by the time the full moon had rested just above the water. To say the least, it was beautiful, but not as beautiful as Kenma, Hinata thought. Hinata set down his bucket, walking closer to the water to look at the moon. The way the cool sand felt on his feet and the moonlight reflecting off the water filled Hinata with an emotion he couldn't describe but welcomed wholeheartedly. Shao! Hinata hears Kenma call from behind him. Hinata turns to look at Kenma with a toothy smile. The moon looks beautiful, right? Hinata extends a hand out to Kenma. Come. Kenma steps closer, taking his hand in his before taking Hinata's other hand as well. Hinata looks at Kenma, confused. There's a moment of silence before Kenma opens his mouth, but closes it just as fast. Hinata notices that Kenma is shaking slightly. He furrows his brows, concerned for Kenma. Kenma looks down at their hands, brows furrowed, lips parted, and cheeks flushed. When Kenma looks back up, Hinata has tears in his eyes. I'm tired of you being my boyfriend, Kenma admits, letting go of Hinata's shaking hands. fists clenched before reaching into his pocket and kneeling in front of Hinata. Hinata's cheeks are warm with tears, hands covering his mouth. He sobs when Kenma opens the box from his pocket to reveal a ring, shaped like the sun and covered in yellow and orange jewels. "Wanna become my husband instead?" Kenma breathed. When Hinata nods, falling down to his knees to hold Kenma, there isn't much talking after that. Warning: this fanfiction does not belong to me, neither does the fan art. Credits to the original artist and author to the fan art and the fanfiction. Haikyuu does not belong to me either. Well, bye children, smiling face with hearts.